I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is You Are Not Your Thoughts. So while we have or we experience thoughts, emotions, behaviors, they are not the essence of who we are. We're so much more than that. And by identifying with our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, we limit our potentials for transformation and change. And so we're going to look a bit more deeply into that in today's conversation. But before that, good morning, good morning, good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you joining us this morning. And welcome to everyone else who's joining us. Let's take a couple minutes to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to be here with you today. So we are looking at the the fact that we are not our thoughts. We are not our emotions. We are not our behaviors. We're something way beyond that and more than that. While our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are an expression, perhaps, they're not who we are. And I don't know about you, but I have on more than one occasion had thoughts that were not in alignment with my essential self, not in alignment with my values or with my intentions. And when we identify with our thoughts, when we believe that our thoughts are who we are, we limit ourselves to a false constraint, to a false definition. And when we can step beyond our thoughts, when we can recognize that our thoughts are not who we are, then we open the door to greater possibility. We open the door to our opportunity to choose, to make choices. So, for instance, I think this, that, or the other thing. Does that mean that, or I had this fleeting thought, does that mean that I need to chase that thought? Does that mean that I am bound to it in some way, shape, or form? There were some years actually where these I was more present to it. And I think maybe it's occurring less now, which is great. But that I would have these thoughts that felt like an absolute intrusion. They weren't in alignment with my beingness. It's like these thoughts, maybe I just picked them out of the ether, or they were a remnant of something else from history that were not relevant, or were not in alignment with or representative in any way of other thoughts and feelings that I had. Just that they just felt like intruders. Like, where did that come from? Kind of like a voice in your head that is a rogue, um a rogue presence. And they were so glaringly discordant with who I experience myself to be, that they were really jarring. And it was an interesting experience. And when uh, we give a lot of power to our thoughts, so it's like we'll say, well, I believe this, that's who I am. And I invite us all to look at that, to look at what the cost is of identifying with our thoughts, even with our beliefs. Like that, when we believe something with such vigor, we create that as our reality. And I'm just going to use an example. For instance, if we believe that we're not worthy, then how do we live life? If we believe that we're not worthy, then we project that into our experience. Like, if we believe that thought, if we have that thought and we invest ourselves in it and identify with it, then we live life through that lens. And or even I'm a good person. Let's say we something that looks as positive as I'm a good person. It's likely in the course of living that we will do something that is out of alignment with that notion of I'm a good person. And then what? Then what? Um, we can say, well, I had a momentary lapse and now I can get back to being a good person. There's a difference between saying I am something versus I intend to live as or my intentions are to be in alignment with these ideas or these thoughts, for example. It's different from when we when we use those thoughts as an identity. Because if I'm a good person and somebody feels hurt by something that I did in good intention, that can create a crisis of being for us, where our sense of self can get shattered when we recognize that we are a spectrum of behaviors and responses and a complex mixture of all things. Then we we can, through curiosity and compassion, recognize this spectrum and actually be able to move from that space. If I believe I'm a good person, I might be, and I do something that someone experiences as hurtful. um I might be inclined to deny that. I might be inclined to dismiss it, or I might be inclined to move into crisis as a result of this discordance. When we can allow that we have this range of experience and of perception, there's space for change. You know, I aspire to be, well, what is a good person anyway? You know, it's an interesting conversation. What does it mean to be a good person? And how do we how do we use that as a compass in our lives? I think getting into this conversation about being a good person, it's not enough of a definition. It's not enough of a um, context. What does it mean to be good? You know, I'm a good person. What does that mean? Does it mean I'm kind? Does it mean I'm generous? Does it mean I'm self-sacrificing? Does it mean I'm willing to suffer through this, that, or the other thing? I think we get to explore more deeply the the essence that is beneath these things, you know, rather than aligning ourselves with certain thoughts and feelings. Like if I have an emotion, if I'm feeling sad, does that mean who I am is depressed, for example? When we take these thoughts and feelings on as beingness, what happens is that we limit our range, we limit our potential. It may look like a good thing in that we're setting up um, guardrails for ourselves in terms of behavior, but but those guardrails, like so many other well-intentioned limitations, can end up putting us in um, it can end up having a negative impact in the overall picture ultimately. So we've talked about this so many times, where we develop a behavior, a coping behavior, to preserve and protect ourselves, and then over time the circumstances change, the need for the behavior changes, and yet the behavior is still in place, and it becomes a limitation and a negative influence. And even though we may have positive intentions in creating these identifications and with certain thoughts and with certain convictions, when when we identify with those parameters end up being a negative constraint often. So if we can learn to hold life and ourselves and our ideas and our emotions, if we can learn to hold them with open hand, we can allow ourselves to be the process of life unfolding rather than trying to create this static, fixed notion. So Rosalind, this is so good. Rosalind says, so does one just pick a topic, where to start, or just whatever is loud at that time? That's such a great question. It is like where to start if we are process, and I'm trying this on as a notion, and as I deepen my inquiry into this notion of being process and an unfoldment, we we can allow these thoughts and emotions to come in. I think in so many ways they pick us, which is why identifying with them is not necessarily the most life affirming thing. So we might read something, for instance, that is like, oh my gosh, that's what I think. I think that too. I think that too. I behave that way too. So that must be who I am. Like we're seeking an identity, seeking maybe self knowledge, self acceptance, self understanding through identification with a group so that we create this sense of belonging, right? By adopting these labels, for example. So even I'm a good person is a label, right? And good people only behave a certain way, right? Um, if instead of this is who I am as a fixed entity, we can allow process, like who I am is life expressing itself through me. Like that for me feels enough like an open-ended idea that it doesn't really give me a way to identify with any particular one thing. It allows me fluidity. It allows me to be the expression of life in many, many forms. Like every expression fits into that definition. It feels it feels more expansive to me. And the thing is, while we are not our thoughts or our behaviors or our emotions, our thoughts, behaviors, and emotions are impactful in our experience. So if I say I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, I'm an environmentalist, I'm a this, I'm a that. It's another box. And we think that some boxes are good and some boxes are bad, but the thing is, unless the box has an open lid, we can end up being stuck in there. And so I don't know if you've had the experience where you believe certain things and then you act in contrast to those things. So like I have a concern for the environment, and there have been decisions that I've made about choices that I've made about um, products, for example, where those products are not environmentally friendly. And for a long time, I beat myself up about that, about not being consistent, not being in alignment, not going to whatever lengths I thought I should have gone to be fully aligned with my investment in the environment. And what I notice is that we are a massive, again, this is a thought, but my experience of myself and others is that we are a mass of contradictions. That we are not beings that are aligned and consistent 100% of the time. So we might have leanings in a particular direction, and there are we're not consistent typically across all fronts, because I don't know that that's even humanly possible. So, Rosalind, I'm wondering, does that, you said, where does one start? I'm wondering if this notion of holding life with open hand being process, if that makes a difference, if we can allow ourselves to be the unfolding and notice certain things about ourselves. I mean, we love the personality tests that tell us more about who we are and how we tick, right? I think we're curious about that, about who we are, again, because we want to belong, or we want to fit, or we want to be able to make sense of all these contradictions. And I think this self-knowledge and self-exploration thing is an unfolding, that it's an evolution where it's an exploration, and I don't think it's ever done. Even though there may be themes that look consistent, or that follow us throughout our lives. I know that there are certain stories that we might really identify with, places in our lives where there may have been a dramatic event, and we then identify ourselves with and define ourselves by that event. And it's just another box. And when we start unboxing, we find that there is so much more potential, that there are that we can release ourselves from these constraints and these limits, and new possibilities open up. I think that one of our greatest general fears is, in my observation, is fear of the unknown. And I believe more and more, again, hypotheses that I'm working with, but the more we are willing to step into the unknown, the more we gain the opportunity for most authentic expression. Because whatever the essence that we are is, as we step into the unknown, it emerges. It emerges more authentically than from the conditioning of the past. Like we're giving ourselves to truly step into the unknown. We're giving ourselves the opportunity to experience something new, to expand ourselves into new opportunity, new possibility, new expression that calls upon whatever the essence is that we are for its engagement. So when we can take life on as an adventure, an unfolding adventure, when we can take on our identities as something that is not fixed but fluid, that may have some constant currents running through it, but not in a way that is static, currents running through as a vital force, as a current of energy, of I just love the word essence. It's such a it's it allows us to go beyond whatever it is that's happening on the surface of those waters, to the essence, to the movement, to the current that is constant underneath the um, underneath the surface. And I don't know that that is definable with words. I don't know that that essence of who we are is something that can be bound by language. But that current allows us then the multitude of expressions. So the water going over the rocks it's the same water that is still in the sunlight. It's the same water that is deep against the floor, the bed of the river. And yet it has all these different expressions. Good morning, Dido. Welcome. Dido says, I love that idea. To me, that says we are part of the flow of life. 100%. We are the flow of life. I mean, like that, it's an idea, it's a thought, but stepping into that thought, we can allow ourselves to be flow and to be transforming and constant in every moment, both transforming and constant. So there's one of the deepest contradictions. Anyway, is it really a contradiction? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's creating the greater whole. And with that, we'll call it a morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I show up here each morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel on weekday mornings. Rosalind says, not one spectrum, all the colors of the rainbow. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Rosalind. That's such a great representation, because each of the colors blends into the others. There's not a specific demarcation, and they're making this whole rainbow, which again, although it has its definition, it also has its diffusing into a greater environment. So it's inseparable from its environment. So yeah, as always, it is such a pleasure and so delicious to have the opportunity to muse together on what it is to be human and to have this human experience. So until next time, so much love to you.